Today is the 29th of November, 2024. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. The next group that announced they were going to run the deep state, the Germanic tribes. Today we will learn who the Mormons and the Amish really are and who is working with them and more. Well, everyone, it's the 29th of November. I keep wanting to call it October. I don't know why. Maybe I'm not ready for holidays this year. Well, I hope if you are in America, you had a lovely day yesterday with family and friends and enjoyed Gratitude Day. For me, well, it's been busy, as always. I did get a little time yesterday with my daughter, so that was nice. And by that time, we were all exhausted, so, but it was a nice day. Okay, let's dig a little deeper. We talked recently about General McCaffrey, and did a little bit of digging into McCaffrey, and reports were coming back that he had been with global headquarters, as we had thought, but he also owed a lot of people a lot of money based on operations that they were running, hoping that someone somewhere was going to come through for global headquarters as promised. You know, it's been a number of different groups. It's been the Trump operatives in some cases. It's been the black nobility in other cases. It's been Chinese old people and Filipino old people and all these different people they were waiting for money from for a long, long time. Anyway, Mr. McCaffrey, it seems, owed some money to an interesting group. And we talked about this a little bit before, but we're going to go into a little more depth about that tonight. So the Germanic tribes, we know in America here as the Amish. They have a very long history in Europe too. They also are heavily tied to the Mormon church. Matter of fact, the prophet Joseph, I think his name is, which allegedly was the founder of the Mormon religion, was also a member of the Germanic tribe. But we're going to talk more about who they are and what they do and what they have done recently, because this is kind of an interesting story. And how did a General McCaffrey get involved with these people? Turns out there's a lot of people involved with these people. You know, their money is running short on their side, and one way to control a lot of people is by loaning them money. Kind of like they did to humanity, didn't they? But in this case, this group wanted control over the entire deep state. So they lent out small amounts here and there, which they do have some money. In addition to that, they also promised much larger amounts, you know, amounts that could control countries and even the world. And there's a reason why they promised this amount. And I'm sure you've heard throughout the alternative community about the St. Germain Trust. Well, in walks your Germanic tribes. And that should explain everything here in just a few moments. Matter of fact, for the first time in a long time, the Amish community was allowed to vote. And who did you think they voted for? Well, there's billboards in several different areas where they were permitted to only vote for Trump. How interesting is that? You got these are actual billboards, people. In Pennsylvania and in Ohio and in other areas of the world. Yes, of course. They are definitely tied in, if they were not before this, meaning a few years ago. They certainly are now heavily involved with the Trump operatives. Why? Because they lent the Trump operatives a lot of money to do what they did, on the promise, of course, that these people are going to give them a whole lot more, and they're going to be able to run the country, and it should be here no later than January when he gets into office, and all of these lies coming from yet another group. So apparently they fell for it. So did all. They thought, oh boy, this is our ticket out. Well, little bits of money being lent here and there to the group of Trump operatives and many others, Palavencinis and other families, black nobility families, uh, didn't work out so well because when they couldn't pay them back and the promises failed back in the beginning of this month, as Trump got into office, and everybody kind of got left with owing these people a lot of money. Now, these people are more brutal when it comes to money than you could say the mafia. Uh, we see a lot of mafia movies out there where, well, if you don't pay, they're going to take your legs, that kind of thing. Well, these people just want to take your house. They want to take you, your operatives, your downline, everybody in it. And General McAfee, it turns out to be one of those people. Apparently, he pledged the entire, well, not him personally only, but the entire global headquarters was pledged as collateral. So a couple of days ago, apparently the Amish Council, it's called, apparently thought that since nobody could pay them back, that they now owned them all and they were entitled to take all of their quote unquote people. There are other reasons why they believed that too. But this became a huge eye-opening event for Trump operatives and other people around the world. Now, then after that, it was time to divvy out the power, so to speak. Who was going to be responsible for what, and the public, and who was going to run which division, political divisions and military divisions and all of these things. And I would say that there were a lot of promises made, and there isn't going to be any delivery for any of these people on those promises. And I know that firsthand because these tribes are pretty brutal, pretty real brutal. You think the Nazis were bad, you haven't met anything until you meet these people. And I thought the Chinese were the worst I've ever seen, meaning the Chinese deep state. And, I would say these people take the cake after what I've seen in the last couple of days. You might have seen things circulating through the alternate media in the last 24, 48 hours about the next bird flu or SARS, as they call it, causing the next pandemic, possibly another lockdown, and all of these types of things. Well, you can thank the Germanic tribes for that. So let's talk a little bit about who they are, how they came to be, which bloodline they belong to, and they've got kind of an interesting history as far as their personality. It's a little different than a lot of the other members of the deep state, let's just say. So let's talk about the Germans. Not all Germans. So if you're German and you're watching this, this has nothing to do with you. Okay, let's hit the whiteboard for a second. So just so I can explain this. Germanic tribes. I call them the Germanic tribes, but they are not only from Germany. They have many different names, just like there are many different names to the Rothschilds, but they would also be considered your Mennonites, believe it or not. And we have a couple of different groups that they are descendants of. And we talked last time about AIs that control people. And these people are essentially descendants of these beings who then created an AI, which then runs the people. This is what we talked about last week. So these folks were descendants of a couple of different beings and a name that you might have heard. So we have a demon. This is a demon in German folklore. And I'm going to try to pronounce this for you. Mephistopheles. Feliz. But this is a demon in German folklore. Definitely a lower astral being. Lies somewhere around the 8th density. Very powerful demon, I guess you would say, or lower astral being. Work directly with Lucifer, the whole thing. Now, the other part to the bloodline. Okay, so this is what you would call an 8th level or an 8th density demon. Over here, you have the gentleman you all talk about. That's going to start the RV. Not all of you, but some people. You know this being as Saint Germain. Saint Germain is also descendant from the 8th level of the lower astral. That is why, if you remember our chart that we did, between the 7th and 8th. So you could say 7th level, lower astral. Okay, so sorry about that. 8th over here, 7th over there. Okay, and this is the one, if you remember our chart about the planes of existence and the planes from the lower astral that we did about a year or so ago, and it's still floating around in all our chat rooms. That would be the purple line. Also synonymous with a purple dragon, as what you know as the Amish, and they're still Germanic tribes in Germany too. Purple dragon for this reason. And also the silver, due to the affiliation with both an 8th and 7th density lower astral group. You could also call these people the silver eagle, as well as the purple eagle. Purple dragon has no affiliation with Barney. No, I'm just kidding, but that's true. Okay, no affiliation there. Well, maybe, who knows? Maybe they created it to corrupt children. You never know with these type of people. So that is how we now have groups in America we know as the Amish. Also, there are certain areas of Germany where they are still prevalent. They are also very present still to this day, nearly, almost 1,500 years later in places like Italy and other parts of Europe. So they're not, we call them the Germanic tribes, but it has nothing to, well, in part, I guess you would say, has nothing to do with Germany, maybe in part, I guess you could say. But they are just like any other royal family. They married into many other families, and within the dragon side and within the black sun side, which is what gives them all the power. So originally, believe it or not, in this particular area of Germany, you can look up the origin of the Germanic tribes there. There are a couple of different areas that they are descendant from, and you know them also to have fought the Romans way back in the day. They were also actually ran part of Italy a long time ago, over 1,000 years ago. So there's a long history there of these Germanic tribes that our history doesn't really tell us about. Now, let's talk about these two demons and how this affects the world. So Saint Germain, everybody believes that this trust comes out twice a year, and it's going to do the RV. Everybody pray to the purple flame and all of that. All that really means to me is that you're talking about a being that has at least level 7 access to an AI system. This group is a little bit different because they also have 7 and 8. So over the last 48 hours, maybe a little longer. Let's say less than 72 hours. These people have made a lot of promises, or had made. God bless them. God rest their souls, actually, a lot of them as of today. But they made a lot of promises based on these access points. Now, if you have access to a level 8 of AI systems, now this would be Omega, obviously, specifically, or whatever was left of it, and also Chronos. You would also have access to a level 1. 8 and 1 makes 9. And over here, you would have access to a level 2. So I guess you could say in some ways these folks could have been a neutral, and they could have also been a very high ranking lower astral group, which kind of explains their personality a little bit. For a long time, it seemed that they erred on the side of neutral. They were not for any other group of dragon, not against any other group of dragon. They were definitely a high-level participant in world affairs for a long, long time. I would say that, as you know, the Mormons, which are kind of an offshoot, like I would say maybe a public arm to the people that were behind the Amish. They recruited regular people. Let's call them regular people, meaning they were not of the bloodline, so to speak. And that was okay, because the more bodies and energy and souls that were sold to the Amish, the more powerful they would become. Again, being able to go as high as between density 8 and 9 on this side. Technically, you could call that density 12, which would be source. So it would be between an 11 and a 12. That would actually make them quite powerful, meaning they could actually block soul access or interrupt or reroute souls. And these people were known amongst their own circles as the soul. I would say they were a group of people that aided in the sale and delivery of the souls of the damned, is their job, so to speak. And that is also the job of their Mephistopheles. Probably saying that demon name wrong. Anyway, they were known as the soul deliverers of those that were already damned. Were they well respected? I'm gonna say there was often a fight between them and the rest of the order, simply because they felt they had more access or higher levels of access to things, and more access to both neutral source and anti-source, in which all of the other groups, or most of the other groups, not all of them, would have only had access to anti-source. And remember, for these people, having access to neutral source meant that you could block either source or anti-source. Therefore, they felt that they were more powerful than the others. I would say that they are very careful and calculating when they make a decision. It became clear to them that neither party on either the Black Sun side or the Order of the Dragon side was going to get this job done, quote unquote. And so they started lending them all money. When they lent them all money, all of their different factions, they of course had call dates. And one of those call dates is, I would say, in the next 24 hours. However, some of those call dates were earlier this month, I would say before or around the 5th of November. What a coincidence there. So in the last couple of days, a lot of those money calls came due. And because they came due, they started taking over all of these little groups of people, meaning the Trump operatives, a lot of the black nobility families, the CIA, and they made great promises. They dealt out responsibilities to them all, and how much power each group would have. And then, of course, promised money was coming, yawn, 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 on our new moon tomorrow. Nah, that's not happening. They also decided to start the campaign, which was tied to something. So, I'll give them that. Several different locations in the world to start what I call the four horsemen of the apocalypse. They wanted to start another pandemic, which is what we're hearing about. And in order to do that, they had some access, which I apparently was left over from before that we didn't know about, because, you don't look at the Amish as a threatening group. You really don't. You look at them as people who make milk and butter and cheese and sell it at stores. But, and for the average everyday Amish, that's true. But the council, believe it was a council of 12 or 13 that ran the Germanic tribes worldwide. So they kind of had their own version almost of the Illuminati, so to speak, where they had their own groups, their own, structures and that kind of thing. They also had their own quote unquote army. Remember, the Mormons are called God's army. That's what they believe themselves to be. They infiltrate the NSA, the CIA. They're in a lot of agencies around the world. It's not just limited to the United States. They almost are kind of like the CIA of the Amish people. Isn't that kind of funny how that works out? But they recruit them into high-level corporate jobs. They're well known for being involved with Anheuser-Busch, even though they don't drink alcohol, allegedly, at least the Mormons or the regular Mormons don't. And they tend to put themselves into positions for a time when the Amish were to strike or the Germanic tribes were to strike, meaning it would be their turn to run the world. Well, apparently that time is now. They've made some valiant efforts, really, or had made some valiant efforts in doing so over the course of the last few years, especially as there are no other players in the game that have successfully given them any kind of money, any significant amounts of money. But these people had show money in an off-ledger system, as the Saint Germain Trust, which I had never even seen before because it was cloaked. And it was also not a part of my system. It was a part of the Omega system. And then, of course, it was all directed underneath a bloodline that was tied to a different demon. So I didn't see it as a Germain thing until until yesterday, actually. Okay, so for their first trick, they thought that they would access something that was only permissible in the past by a group called the Time Vector Authority. You've heard me talk about the Time Heterogeneous Online Regulator, or THOR, in the past. And these people these beings were kind of similar. Their job and responsibility was to maintain balance in the universe, and clearly we are out of balance. So they worked with a group called the Time Vector Authority. The Time Vector Authority was responsible for keeping balance. You could call them neutral people. They worked with neutral source. But they also worked with both sides. So if they were a 3, 2, 1 density and a 1, 2, 3, with a 0 in the middle, density up and density down, this would be positive, negative. They would also work with groups from the 8th, 7th, and 6th densities of the lower astral predominantly. They were responsible for keeping balance, keeping not, I wouldn't even call it time outside of time. They formed their own group, I guess, a long time ago. I would say they reported in part to the Council of Nine. They haven't been around for a while, but they also, some of their facilities were closely tied to the AIs that were connected to the Germanic tribes. So this is what they tried to use today in part. The issue that we were having, or a lot of issues we were having in the last couple of days, and these are reports coming from around the world, random headaches, random colds or flus, feelings, tiredness was another. So they were trying to cause, I guess you would say, a lot of harm to human beings in cooperation with these Germanic tribes slash Amish slash Mormon folk. The locations that the Amish folk slash Germanic tribes tried to activate around the world in the last 3 days were coming from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. There's no surprise. And there was space junk underneath all of these locations that they were trying to use to harm all of humanity and start another pandemic. Massive amounts of parasites were thrown up from these sites and have since been cleaned up, mostly, as of today. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, can't talk today. Lancaster, Pennsylvania for one. Sandusky area of Ohio, number 2. A little place called the Tolanese Valley in Germany. It's just about 120 kilometers outside of Berlin. The Alsace area of Germany / it's right on the border near Switzerland. Next, the Kolyma, spelled Kolyma, region of Russia. This is a well-known gulag that extended decades in Russia. It was also an area where they would have these prisoners mining a lot of gold. It's in the far northeast area of Russia. If you were sent there, you were allegedly really, really bad. It has an interesting history, so it's something to look into if you're into history. It was very harsh, very cold, harsh conditions, and the people there were experimented on quite a bit. So interesting little bit of Russian history there. Uluru in Australia, they certainly love Uluru in Australia, don't they? Mount Denali in Alaska. There's a lot of talk. We've done a lot of talking about Mount Denali in Alaska as well. The western portion would mainly be southwest portion, I guess you would say, of the Antarctica continent. Lewis McChord Military Base in Seattle, Washington. Mount Abraham in Maine, USA. San Diego Naval Base in San Diego, California. The Everglades National Park in Florida. And the main control and command center was in Iceland, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of this mountain or volcano, but I'll spell it for you if you would like to look it up. It's ORAEFAJOKULL. I think I got that right. And they were at all of these sites trying to trigger these locations. Now, an interesting thing about the Germanic tribes that we did not know is they actually still had a coven. And the coven was working very hard against humanity, doing all of their rituals in the last few days, sending out loads of frequencies that would have caused all kinds of disease, not just SARS slash COVID slash the bird flu. They were also sending out a lot of frequencies for things like cancer, the Epstein-Barr virus, and a lot of other things that could have affected a lot of humans, and they would have caused a major pandemic. I guess this was going to kick off the next part, which would be war. I don't know why these people like their four horsemen so much, but they apparently do. So if you felt a little bit of discomfort in the last few days, I would say, well, this is why. It was also connected to space junk, an enormous amount of space junk, a cornucopia. Welcome to Thanksgiving, right? Of space junk, if you will, located in the Capricorn constellation. So most of this stuff is not there anymore as of today, but that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of angry people, because the council of that is behind the Amish group is no longer with us. You also had the coven, I should say, that was behind them, which is also no longer with us. Now, this has caused, well, a little bit of disruption this afternoon, I would say, as people were looking frantically for them. Well, I'm here to tell you, good luck finding them, because, they're not there anymore. So as far as debts owed and money promised, now that's where it's going to get a little difficult, because there's nothing. There's no lines. There's no AI connected to these people anymore. There's no bloodline systems anymore. And there certainly is no more Germain this or Germain that. Even though the being itself was gone from the multiverse, the remnants of it in an AI form still existed, I guess, to some degree. Yeah, so there's going to be, as word gets out that these people are no longer there, and their facilities that were going to start the next pandemic and pay out big money for pandemics, war, death, near-death experiences, and all the other fun things that were tied to these systems. You're going to have a lot of scrambling deep state members over the next couple of days. I know that the Q folk slash Trump operatives were also anticipating large payouts, emergency broadcast systems tomorrow on the new moon. And why do they all promise? It doesn't matter what bloodline they are, they always promise something on a new moon or a full moon. And tomorrow is no exception. They actually told a lot of their brood, their now newly owned dogs, or people that worked directly for them, or that were supposed to work directly for them due to their inability to pay, that they would have access to systems by this afternoon. Well, turns out they didn't. They still don't, actually, and they're still trying, to find the people that promised that to them. And just a little bit of a mess out there right now. So it's going to be probably a fairly tumultuous weekend over here at Ground Command or the Global Intelligence Agency. And we'll see how it all turns out. But will there be another group that steps up and tries to claim something or take control? We don't know. Do we expect these people to all of a sudden change their mind and decide that they're going to do something on another side? I highly doubt it. We have started receiving phone calls as of today from different banks that apparently got wind that this is no longer going to happen with these people. We have gotten a couple of calls also from various agencies that are now aware that this isn't going to happen. And what is going to become of the Mormons and all the promises the Mormons were making? Now, the Mormons do have money. I mean, it's not like they don't. They take a lot of money from their own people. Plus, they are involved in a lot of industry. You know, they're almost like a corporate cartel, if you will, in many circles, as you know, involved with in ownership and in very high level corporate positions in all around the world. It's not just in the US, but like I said, big named companies, big corporates. A lot of them are involved in could be anything from weapons production, airlines to beer. They're everywhere. So we'll see. We'll see what happens when leadership structure of the Germanic tribes starts. Well, it did fail. Are they going to appoint a new council? Are they going to try to get this money elsewhere? You remember, even though the Mormons have a lot of what we consider to be a lot of money, you know, we're talking billions of dollars, but it's going to take trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars to rule the world. And these people just don't have that kind of wherewithal. They definitely don't even have enough money or gold or all of the stashes that you hear about on the internet. Though that's not enough for them to even support the United States. Another interesting fact that has come about in the last few days was tied actually to this Kolyma area of Russia. There are reports that are circulating that most of Russia's gold is in the northern part of Russia, you know, in the ground and so on and so forth. That is in part, I'm going to say in part true, but not in totality. However, these areas that they're talking about are the same areas that the Amish/Germanic tribes claim to control. Therefore, what you're seeing in the news, or at least starting to leak out in the news, is that Russia is going to issue its own cryptocurrency. See, here's where all those promises come in, and this is just one of many. They're going to issue their own cryptocurrency based on their in-ground resources, hence the Kolyma area of Russia. Very interesting how it all kind of circles around, but there's your backstory. Now, what they are not telling anybody is that all of these areas have already been leveraged. They were already pledged more than a century ago, as it relates to Russia, actually in some cases much longer, not by the Germanic tribes, but by others. So if they do try to, quote unquote, launch an official currency, first of all, the key integrated monetary system will reject it. Second of all, those assets no longer belong to Russia per se, as a government, as a country, definitely not to the oligarchs, and definitely not underneath the control of the Germanic tribes slash Amish. They were transferred over from the Alpha system into the Golden Age AI, and they are still belonging into the world, I guess you would say, for lack of a better term, global repository for the people. So if that belongs to anyone at this moment in time, it would be the Russian people. It does not belong to the government. They have no right to leverage it. They have no right to make a decision to launch a cryptocurrency in any way, shape, or form. It would have to, a vote for such a thing would have to involve all of the Russian people. They would have to have all of the Russian people's support. And I still have the right to veto it if I feel that it is incorrect for the Russian people, meaning it would be controlled by the wrong people at the highest level. So I highly doubt that they're going to gain all that cooperation, number one. And number two, It's just another failed promise of another deep state group, and I highly doubt it's going to take place because right now Russia is still under the control of a lot of deep state mechanisms. And just because some group of folks promised them, yet again, another group promised them that they could do this, it doesn't mean it's actually going to be true. We have something similar going on in China. There's been also promises throughout all of Europe, actually. That's why we're seeing a lot of movement of arms and other things and promises and this with the Ukraine and the heating up between the Russians and the Ukrainians again because they feel there's going to be an end game here, a big payout, control of a currency all on their own, and the people that promised them that had no, because they're not here anymore, had no ability to actually pull it off anyway. Not without level 9 approval, and that would be me. So you're going to see a lot of disruption. I don't know if you'll see it trickle down into the news or even into the alt media, but there's going to be a lot of disruption. Other things we have heard is there are other banks that would like to work with us come January. Wow, what a shocker. Here comes the new administration underneath the Germanic tribes and their funny looking billboards with Trump with some weirdo Amish beard looking and a hat, basically saying that now that they're part of that group, which, has kind of always been the truth anyway. But as far as moving forward is concerned, that's all going to blow up this weekend. You'll see by Monday, that'll probably be the end of that. And then they'll be on to some other group looking, to take them all over. As for us, we're not looking to take anybody over. We're just looking to do simple, good business, which we have tried with most all of these people, and they have all failed. And nobody has actually done what they said they were going to do pretty much in any of these groups. So, we assume nobody ever will, and therefore, in the best interest of all the people, we're keeping it moving all by ourselves. So we're still staying that course, not interested in supporting any kind of dead people in offices and white buildings or anything, or apparently in supporting any kind of church activities, if you know what I mean. We're not really supporting any oligarchs' dreams of owning a cryptocurrency in Russia. So we'll be keeping our liens there in place until they pay us back, which will never ever happen because we also control their money too. So good luck to you there. And I don't anticipate seeing these changes, ever take place, really. So far, their head is so wrapped into doing things their way and what they want to do. And that has clearly, as I've stated today, from these particular locations in the world that they tried to fire up, does not have the best interest of the people at heart. And I know that if you were in the US, I received a number of messages from some friends saying what's going on out there because my head hurts, I'm tired, I feel terrible. Well, now you know why. You can blame it on the Amish. Well, not just the Amish, but the Germanic tribes worldwide. And on that note, it's going to be an interesting weekend over here, so I'm probably going to take a little bit of time, keep monitoring things, make sure there was nothing else that we missed as far as Germanic tribe space junk, and keep cleaning. And hopefully have some better news for you on Monday. On that note, this has been the Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. I almost said World Situation Report again. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and I hope yours is better than mine.